Alright, so I'll lead another meditation for maybe half hour, and then we do question answer, okay? So here in this text, we reach the bottom of the first page. You see, knowing how things conventionally exist, train in great compassion. Begin by placing all blame onto one thing, self-centeredness. Then meditate on the kindness of all beings. Alternate taking and giving. For taking, begin with yourself. These two, taking and giving, ride on your breath. So we're going to do this point in the meditation. And then we might touch the point 4. On the basis of these three objects, these three poison arise. Transform them into a source of virtue. So for some beings, for some advanced being, simply the fact of knowing that all beings want to be happy and that they have problems, spontaneously the wish to make all beings happy arise. They don't need anything else. They don't need any other reason. So for certain bodhisattva, when they realize that all beings are like themselves, that they want to be happy and not have problem, they spontaneously have the wish to make all beings happy. You see, due to their training in previous life, so spontaneously that thought arises. But for us ordinary beings, so we have to reflect on the drawback of selfishness and the benefit of helping, of having an altruistic outlook. So you see, for example, His Holiness Dalai Lama often says, you see, so people make experiment with developing an altruistic outlook, in schools, for example, in Canada and India. His Holiness teaches altruism in school, so in a secular way. So they notice, you see, in the school there's less violence, there's less unruliness, people are more friendly, more relaxed, happier. So the classroom are happier and then they study better. So there's all this advantage of developing an altruistic outlook. So His Holiness asked to the teacher, and the teacher answered, yeah, there's all this benefit of altruism in the classroom and, in the school. But then His Holiness said, is that all? And then he says, you see, you missed the most important point, is that if you have an altruistic outlook, yes, you benefit other, you're kind to other, you're helpful, yes, but you missed the most important point. The most important point is that if you have an altruistic outlook, you are happy. You see, it makes you happy by having an altruistic outlook. You have self-esteem, you have self-worth. You see, your own happiness is the result of your altruism. And that's the most important thing. You see, so you kind of renounce selfishness, self-centeredness, thinking about you, and by renouncing that, actually you find the happiness. It's very interesting. So one has really to think about that quite deeply, you see, that self-centeredness, self-worry, self-cherishing, it's meant to bring us happy, but we never get it. There's always something to worry about. It could always be a little bit better. the house could be better, the partner could be a little bit nicer, the child could be a little bit less unruly. It could always be a bit better. The unsatisfied mind, the self-judging mind is very difficult to please, even if you try. But if you give up and care for others, so the peace, the joy is a result of that. So this, you hear this statement, but it seems so untrue. How can that be? I have to take care of myself and my happiness and my movie and my Netflix. It's pleasure and my book and my walk to stay healthy and, and my job and my partner and my children, I have to take care of all that and it will make me happy. It's very deeply, it's not at all something that you can say, oh yes, it's true, let's change it. No, it's not like that. You have really to think it very deeply, because it's not at all natural to be altruistic, completely. So to think that, by not thinking about all this, but thinking about other, actually I will find happiness and peace and joy. It's not at all obvious, So one has really, you see, and then you say, oh yes, Dalai Lama says and Lama Zopa Sim says, it must be like that, But actually, back home, what's movie tonight, So one has really, again, go from the intellect down to the experience. So if that's not enough, so one level is for some beings to realize that all beings want to be happy is enough. For other beings to realize that self-searching is the base of all problem and altruistic is the cause of all happiness, that's enough. And then for those is not enough, you use the third thing, meditate on the great kindness of all beings. So that's the key. So in certain texts, always meditate on the great kindness of all living beings. Meaning always is the key word. Always. You see, in this previous meditation, you think we are unrelated. I care for your happiness, but you're completely independent of me. So here, the point that comes up is we are not unrelated. We are all related. And my happiness is dependent on you all. My own happiness is completely dependent on you. And that's very important insight to get. Somehow our ego grasping makes us believe we are a self-made person. I'm an independent person. I don't depend on anyone. I can take care of my happiness. But actually, my own happiness is completely dependent on other and only dependent on other. So you see, this body we have that we cherish is due to the kindness of our parent. Then if we survived, is due to the kindness of our parents or our caregiver, the nanny or whoever took care of us, our grandparents, whoever were there in the first years of our life. And then we became who we are due to the kindness of our friends, our teacher at school. We learned the language, how to read and write due to their kindness. And we learn, a job and a way to live our life due to the kindness of people that gave us work, that trained us, that give us money with which we can buy things. So everything we have, if you look right now, the clothes you wear is due to the kindness of some people which made them, which drew them in their head, the people which are behind the idea, and then the people which put these ideas into practice, that made the cotton, made the fabric, that dyed the fabric, and then that cut it and sew it and the whole thing. So then you may wear a watch or some jewelry that again somebody had the idea, and a whole lineage of craftsmen, of a generation perfected the way of making watches and ornaments. So we can enjoy this due to the kindness of others. Then you have a cup of tea, so the cup is made by somebody, the tea is made by somebody. The computer, the tablet, the house you live in, the car you drive, the roads you drive on, the house you live in, the sewage system, the electrical system, the water, the plumbing. All these, you see, we can enjoy every moment of our life due to the kindness of other beings. We are not unrelated. We depend on each and every living being. So we are all interrelated like that. So we read a book. Those of you who have ever written a book or been involved in the process know how many hours and days get involved into making a book or even a booklet. It's a huge amount of work. You can say, yes, I paid for it, but if these people didn't do it, you couldn't buy it. So much effort put in a book. So we fly in airplanes. You see all the people involved in us buying this airplane ticket. It's unimaginable. All the tradition, over many generations, how airplanes are built, over generation this gets perfected. And then the gas, and then the pilot training, the steward and all the people working in the airport. So a huge amount of people are there that make us possible to fly. So kind, So we can have our lifestyle because there are some people working in sweat lodge, you could say, in China and Vietnam and other poor country. Our products are cheap. We go to the dollar store or other store and we buy this cheap product that make our life easier. But it's due to the kindness and suffering of other people. So now, this is for our material well-being, but then for our emotional well-being, we depend on our parents, our brother, sister, our friends, our partner, our children, our friend, our community. You see, even our emotional well-being, our sense of belonging, of being appreciated, you see, is due to the kindness of other people. And then if we have health problem, we can rely on doctors, nurse, hospital, which they depend on their previous generation training and so forth. And then if we are sick or old, we rely on caregiver. So emotionally, you see, we're so dependent on other people, on their kindness, whether they do it directly or indirectly. We're completely dependent on others. And then spiritually, you see, again, we depend on our teachers, on the books, the teachings. We rely on Dharma Center, like here, on people which work and serve this Dharma Center. We depend on the other people coming to the courses. You see, if we would be the only person coming to the course would not happen. So it's the kindness of all the other participants that can pay the bill for the center and so forth. So our being able to take part in a course or a retreat is due to the kindness of all the other people. And so our spiritual knowledge comes due to the kindness of others. It's not self-made. And then our spiritual development again depends on others. If there would be nobody else, we couldn't develop love and compassion. You see, this spiritual quality depends on having other people around you. And the development of patience, of compassion, you see, this deep level depends on you having enemies, having troublemaker in your life. If you wouldn't have any troublemaker, your love and compassion would be quite shallow, quite superficial. So it's because we have troublemaker in our life that the qualities, you see, become stable and become deep. So whoever we are, whatever we have become, whatever we can become, and all this is due to the kindness of others. You see, if you get that very deeply, every being appears to you very kind. Even the people which are troublemaker in your life. There's a way of looking at them, they are so kind. So it says normally in the teaching, you see, half your spiritual quality come due to the kindness of other people, and half come due to the teachings of the enlightened beings. So Shantideva says, so how come that we love and have devotion to the enlightened beings, but not to other living beings? Our very enlightenment depends on other living beings. So in the teaching it says, you see, whenever you see one living being, you think, this person is so kind. On dependence on that person, I can reach enlightenment. See, in dependence on that mosquito, I can reach enlightenment. In dependence on that ant, I can reach enlightenment. In dependence on that turkey, I can reach enlightenment. In dependence on that dog, I can reach enlightenment. In dependence of that person that just took my parking spot in front of me, I can reach enlightenment. You see, there's a way that you look at each living being as somebody dear to you. You see, instead of being Mr. or Mrs. Nobody, they become somebody dear to you, related to you. You see, what it does is that it touches your heart becomes soft. You see, your heart cares, that person is so kind to me. By its mere existence, he or she doesn't need to like me. He or she can even hate me, but still that person is beneficial for me. My own enlightenment depends on that person. So if one think around that, you familiarize one's mind, then your heart becomes soft and gentle, and you have this joy of living this beautiful warm heart. It's so cozy, so comfortable to live with this warm heart, that is thankful for all living beings. So that's how one brings in everyday life. When you have a meal, you think about all the people involved in you enjoying this meal, how kind they are, how this meal is dependent on all these people working in the field, planting, harvesting, and then bringing to the shop, and so forth, and people cooking. So all these people are involved in me enjoying this meal. So if you look from that perspective, even if it's a little bit too salty or too spicy or not warm enough, you don't mind, because you're grateful for just being able to eat this meal, and you respect all the work that went into it. So that's why in the text it says, always remember the great kindness of all beings, how all your happiness depends on all living beings. For material thing, for emotional thing, for spiritual thing, everything depends on other. So if you do that sincerely, then you naturally transform. You naturally want to repay the kindness, be kind back. It naturally arises. Again, it's a state of mind. You see, one needs repeated practice, remembering, you brush your it's good to do things that you do every day, automatically. You see, you can brush your teeth due to the kindness of the people that made the toothbrush, the toothpaste, the mirror, the water on your tap. It's so easy to keep your teeth clean, yet so much work was involved into make it possible. So to have a thought about their kindness, then it makes your heart warm, So each time you wear clothes, you think of, all these people that got involved into making these clothes. You go into a car, you think, all the people which worked in the factory to make it. And you drive on the road, all the people involved in making these roads. And all the building, so much work. So it says, always remember the kindness of others. It's so important. Somehow there the word always is missing. Then meditate on kindness of all beings. Yeah, it got jumped out. Yeah, it got left out. Yeah, in the root text it says, always meditate on great kindness of all beings. And if you do it, something changes your mind, You become less self-absorbed. You care more about others. You're more thankful. And then it goes to the meditation of taking and giving. So in Shantideva it says, you see, if you have the thought of wishing to alleviate the headache of someone, that's a virtuous thought, which has a virtuous thought, meaning it has a positive result. It has a happy consequence for yourself. Merely to have the thought of wishing to alleviate the suffering of someone, a small headache. Then if you have the thought to alleviate his or her cancer, or or creating for that person to have a good rebirth, take away suffering of bad rebirth, and then having the wish that person to reach out of suffering forever and full enlightenment. So it has different degrees of happy consequences depending on how long lasting the happiness you can offer to that person. Has more positive energy. And now if you imagine that multiplied by 2 beings or 3 beings, so it multiplies by the number of beings towards whom you have that wish. So imagine, you see, if Shantideva says, if wishing to alleviate the headache of one being is virtuous, then what can be said if you have the wish to alleviate all the headache of all living beings in the universe? If that could be quantified as a positive energy, how huge that positive energy would be like. And then you don't want just to alleviate the headache of all these beings, you want to alleviate all their suffering, physical, mental, and not for 5 minutes, not for a day, not for a life, not for a million lives, but forever. And you want to lead each and everyone to the omniscient mind. So how can you quantify the virtue or the positiveness of that state of mind? It's immeasurable. So whenever you generate that state of mind, you create the highest virtue possible, and the happiness you will experience as a consequence of that state of mind is immeasurable. So this wish, you see, so when we exhale, we imagine giving that happiness to each and every living being. And there's no greater source of virtue or positive karma you can create. Is you imagine leading all beings to enlightenment. So it is a most beautiful state of mind. And then you imagine taking away the suffering of each and every living being, physical, mental, spiritual, out of compassion, because you care for them. So out of love you give them all happiness till enlightenment, and out of compassion you take away whatever troubles them. From physical, mental, spiritual, obscuration to omniscience, everything you take away from them. So the quickest way to reach enlightenment, the quickest way to get spiritual realization, the quickest way to purify our mind, the quickest way to create merit is to generate this altruistic state of bodhicitta. You see, to wish each and every living beings that you wish to lead each and every being to enlightenment, and you wish to take away all pain and suffering of all living beings. That state of consciousness is the state of consciousness that will lead you to enlightenment, and is the state of consciousness that will bring you about happiness in this life, at the time of death, in the bardo, and all future life. There's no more greater cause of happiness for yourself and others than this state of consciousness. So at the beginning we have to think about it, think about its advantage, and try to produce it through effort. First in a contrived manner, we fake it, we pretend that we generate that state of mind. Then gradually it becomes more and more sincere, and then it becomes more and more about with less effort, till it becomes our second nature. When you stop being busy, with your job or with your care for, things of this life, naturally you go back to that state of consciousness. So once you have generated that, you have entered the path to enlightenment. You have generated bodhicitta. And when that is stable, when you die with that state of consciousness. When you're in the bardo, you are with that state of consciousness. When you take rebirth, you're with that state of consciousness. You see, the purpose of your life, the purpose of your death, the purpose of your bardo, of your rebirth, is to bring all beings to happiness and to take away their suffering. It's a state of consciousness. And they say it's the most advanced state of consciousness you can realize. Is the quickest path to enlightenment. Is the greatest purification and the greatest accumulation of positive karma. So often the lamas, they say, you see, if you only develop one spiritual quality, may it be this one. If you have only one realization, may it be this one. Because with this realization, all the other realization come. All the rest come. Omniscient mind is in the palm of your hand once you have bodhicitta. And as long as you don't have bodhicitta, you haven't not yet entered to the path to enlightenment. So the path to enlightenment starts when you have this state of consciousness. That's the door, the entry to the path to enlightenment. when one is familiarized with those state of mind, one puts them onto the breath. When you exhale, you imagine you bring happiness to each and every living being. So you out breath, you can imagine it as a bright light that transforms into whatever beings need, whether food, drink, teacher, love, partner, spiritual realization, whatever beings desire, you light rays that you emanate transform spontaneously into what each and every being desire and lead them to enlightenment. And when you inhale, you imagine you take away from them whatever bothers them, whatever physical pain, mental pain, relationship difficulties, job difficulties, spiritual obstacle, everything you take away from them out of compassion. And then whatever problem you have, you see, when you have physical pain or sickness, you imagine that you take the similar sickness of all beings upon your sickness, and by yourself experiencing this sickness, you free all other beings from that sickness. And then whatever mental problem you have, you say, by myself having this mental problem, may nobody else has this mental problem. I take all their mental problem upon my mental problem. I free them. By myself experiencing it, I free all beings from that problem. And then you have mental affliction, fear, for example. So by myself experiencing fear, may nobody else experience fear. I free all beings from their fear by absorbing it into my own fear. So the positive energy of those thoughts are immeasurable, because mentally you free all living beings from their pain, mental affliction, obscuration to omniscience. So you free all beings. By the very problem you have, you free all beings from theirs. So it's the greatest purification of your own mind, of your own negative karma, and the greatest source of positive energy. So you use your very problem, instead of them becoming an obstacle for your spiritual development, they become food for your spiritual experience, for your spiritual progress. So you're tired, you cannot meditate. May all the tiredness of all living beings absorb in my own tiredness. May I free them. And then whatever goodness you experience, you share with all living beings. You see, you have wealth. May all beings have wealth. You mentally share all your wealth with all living beings. You have good health. You share your good health with all living beings. You have a good job, you share your good job with all living beings. You live in a nice house, nice neighborhood, you offer it to all living beings. You have spiritual qualities, you have patience, good heart, you offer it to all living beings. So there's nothing you are that you cannot use for your spiritual development. So all the goodness you share with others, it increases your altruism, your love, your care for all beings. And whatever problems you have, you imagine taking away the same problem from others, you freeing them. So, you see, you can do that at the level of the relative truth level, you know. But if you mix it with the ultimate truth level, you see, there's no concrete me that takes the problem of other. There's no concrete me that loves other. There's no concrete other. There's no concrete pain. There's no concrete happiness. You see, it takes away the drama of it. If you see solid me taking on the solid pain of other, sharing my solid happiness to solid others, the whole thing becomes quite dramatic. But if you mix it with the understanding of how things are essenceless, it becomes joyful. And then if you mix it with the infinite time realization, you have infinite time to bring all beings to happiness and freedom. It's a state of consciousness. It doesn't matter how many beings you bring happiness in this life. You have infinite life to bring it about. So it's a state of consciousness that you cultivate. And it's a state of consciousness that is so happy, so peaceful, so worth, you have so much self-esteem, self-respect. You see, you're such a decent human being when you develop that state of consciousness. And it's easy for you to befriend anyone. And because of that attitude, you see, people are attracted to you. You see, people want to be your friend because you're loving, you're caring, you're kind, you're patient. Whoever comes close to you is benefited by you. You're a positive influence wherever you are, whoever you are with. And everybody comes in contact with you is happy, is more peaceful. So you have many friends, and you attract like-minded people which value good heart, which value patience, which value caring for others. So you have a good life. So even though you don't want you don't necessarily look for it. It happens to you because of your attitude, because of your good heart and your caring. So from lifetime to lifetime, even a bodhisattva doesn't want to look for his own happiness because of the virtue he creates. You see, his mind is happy, and because of the good deeds he does, his life is happy. So he goes from lifetime to lifetime being happy, and benefiting others. And gradually getting closer and closer to enlightenment. So when one has perfected the extension of consciousness in time, space and depthness, you see, one has perfected that, remove all the veil, then one reach complete enlightenment. And there's no happier state of consciousness that exists when all the veil of one's mind has been removed in all directions. All right. If you have any question or any thoughts about this little mumble bumble that I have shared with you. You see what, yes, you see, the point is that if we really make the effort to do the work, the state of consciousness one reaches is really beautiful. When you look at the mind of His Holiness Dalai Lama or Lama Zopa Rinpoche, they're always giggling, they're always happy, It's very strange, yet they don't think about themselves, they dedicate their life to others, and they're so happy. And they don't become like robots, all out of the same mold. You see, each one has his own personality, his own characteristic. So it's quite beautiful, and they're very lively and curious, and it's not at all a state of consciousness where no, it's nice. So I think to have been exposed to people like that is a teaching in itself. Even if they wouldn't say anything, just being in their presence and looking the way they are, is inspiring, and one wants to become like that, isn't it? So to have had being exposed to people like that in one's life, one is so fortunate, that we have so role model like that, that they are not only Trumps in the world, as role model, they are Buddhas, they're enlightened beings, and that's so precious, you see, for example, myself, I was brought up as Catholic, and then later on I was involved in Hinduism, you know, Aurobindo, Krishnamurti, Ramdas, and many other incredibly great Hindu yogis. You know, when you read the biography of Vivekananda, you know, his gurus and things like amazing master, Ramana Krishna, and you know, Ramana Maharshi, so great. So I went to their places, but all of them had passed away. So you go into their place, their ashram in India, you have this great spiritual energy there, but they have passed away. You know, and as Christian, I used to go to Lourdes and other chapel, you know, in France and in Europe. So you have this strong spiritual energy, but there's nobody there alive. You know, you see that something great has happened here, but the master have gone, you know. So now in the Tibetan tradition, because they were kind of blocked in Tibet behind the Himalayas, you know, they cultivate this great spiritual tradition, and they got this great enlightened master. And we, by some good karma, good form, were able to enter into presence of these beings, you know, and that's so precious because it makes it alive instead of just being some dead teaching. You know, for example, when I went to this ashram, I thought, oh, something great has happened here in the past, but where are they now? You know, nobody was there, but you see something great has happened. Right? Whereas we in the Tibetan tribe, we still have this enlightened master that we come into the presence of. And by itself, even they don't say, just by being in their presence, it inspires us, you know. So we're so fortunate. No? But maybe, you see, in 100 years, 500 years, even the Tibetan tradition will be dead. You will have the books, you have the methods, but no more beings would have the realization to inspire us. It's going to happen, you know. It's not just a matter of time. You know, to say each generation there are less enlightened master. You know, and suddenly there won't be any. You know, that's how even Buddhists, they say it's you know, it's going to last 5,000 years and disappear. Buddhism will disappear. It's an impermanent phenomenon. Right? So we are some among the most fortunate beings of this generation of having met these present enlightened beings like His Holiness and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and others. No? But it's not going to last forever. You know, each generation there will be less, till there won't be any. So to have this present opportunity is so fortunate. No, we're so lucky. Because, you see, if you hear about bodhicitta, but you don't know anybody that has realized it, or you hear about emptiness, but nobody has realized it, you hear about past and future life, but nobody sees it, you see, it just becomes a fairy tale, a spiritual fairy tale, you know. But if you meet beings which have those realizations, wow, you know, it brings it alive. It makes it, wow, it's real, you know. So, you know, we're so fortunate. That's how you get inspired, you know. So when these high beings come, it's good to go into their presence, you know. Very, very useful. Because that's how you get your spiritual aspiration gets nourished, gets inspired, you know. Suddenly it puts a kick back and you're back on track for a while, you know. And then of course gradually, you know. But then you get another kick, you know. And slowly by getting enough kicks, you know, you move on your own. Yeah, somebody had something to say. Yeah.
So this question is about this lifetime.
Yes.
But it's coming up a lot now, and it's coming up a lot more. So it's not necessarily the political stage, which...
We have a microphone to pass around or not? We don't? No.
It's
Okay.
not just referring to the political state now, but much more serious in the past weeks and months. There's scientific reports, about we're kind of past the tipping point ecologically. And many people that I encounter are depressed and frightened and worried about the fate of the planet, which is apparently becoming inevitable. So my question is, as an aspiring bodhisattva, how can we benefit other people who don't have this long view, who don't understand degenerate times and the Kali Yuga and so forth? How can we be helpful to ease their minds and fears and our own, but how can we deal with that skillfully?
So first I think we have to do whatever we can to improve the situation, by being politically active, by voting, by writing to the representative, not only leave it just to prayers, like His Holiness says, prayer is not enough, one has to actually act, by being a good member of our society. And we live in a democracy by chance, so we can do things, right? So we should try to do as much as one can, right? So that also empowers us, instead of saying, oh, I cannot do anything about it. Often people feel quite paralyzed and powerless, but yet there are means, to express and write and do things. So I think one should do that. And then spiritually, I think it comes down to what one can do. And you see, like Shantideva says, if getting depressed and unhappy would benefit the situation, so let's get all depressed and unhappy about it. But it doesn't benefit, right? So, if I can do something about it, I do. And if I cannot, being unhappy doesn't benefit. Right? So let's cultivate a happy mind, a peaceful mind, and share that with the people around me, and make other people more conscious, speak about the problem and share my insight about it. You see, often people are quite ignorant about global warming, about pollution, things like that, because of fake news, which are quite spread. So to have certain information that are valid, that have good sources, and that don't go into an extensive technological explanation that people don't understand. Maybe certain texts resume the main points and explain them very clearly. So these texts to share, with the people around us in our community, and spread it further. And nowadays with Facebook and internet, and so there's so many avenues of sharing this information more in a more extensive way. So we should do that, So can share this concern, because effectively it's quite sad, and our politicians seem to be dinosaurs. They live in the past, they want to maintain the past, and it seems that to change things don't go fast enough, So, yeah. So it's sad, yes, because we miss enlightened politicians which could take difficult decisions, because it implies that we all renounce a certain level of comfort and pay more for utilities, that we now have cheap. So we should accept to pay the double for what we, and then accept that maybe we are too many people on this planet, that we have to scale down. So there's many difficult decisions to take, that, and it concerns all of us and all the people on this planet. So it's not easy, and our self-centered attitude doesn't want to change, he wants to maintain the status quo, because we don't have this long-term view, thinking about our children or grandchildren, because they are the ones that are going to be affected. So the same thing with the debts the countries have, right? So we accumulate debts, but somebody has to pay them back, you know, or we use nuclear thing, and then the waste, somebody has to take care of it. So we offer to our children and grandchildren not only this planet, but we offer them our nuclear waste that they have to take care of, you know. So there's many things that as a, how to say, as a humanity, we are really kind of strange, you know. Our short-term view and our self-centered attitude makes us completely unaware of what we do to our planet and to future generation, you know. So it's sad, you know. But and then, so to share this insight, I think is important, because most people don't want to look. And so as long as they have their BMW in their parking lot, you know, and they have enough water to clean it and to clean their plants, you know, it doesn't matter what happens to other people. It's sad, you know, so narrow. That's exactly the self-centered attitude, you know, self-cherishing mind. That is the root of all problem. So it's a problem, how to say, individually, but also collectively, you know. And to change the collective consciousness, it needs a certain critical mass, you know, to that to bring about. So, yeah, I think it's good to be aware of it and oneself have a good heart and try to, you see, I think what the Dalai Lama says, the most important thing is, in this degenerate time where there's so much problem, so much suffering, so much scare, so much depression, if you are a happy, peaceful, loving person in the middle of all this mess, you are kind of light, you know, you are light, and whoever comes into contact with you is benefited. So that's how much you can do. And then he says, one person touches two person, and these two person touch each two person, and gradually we make a better world, you know. So one has to start with oneself, and then with one's own environment, whatever that is, you know, and then inspire those and make them grow, and like that. So His Holiness says, you know, one has to be organically, working organically, you know, kind of like that.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Venerable René. When doing taking and giving with the breath, can it be like when we do mantras, you know, like while I'm washing dishes and while I'm walking? And I mean,
Definitely.
Yeah, you can do one breath for one person and another breath for another.
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. It comes later in the text, you know, how to integrate in everyday life.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically it comes down to that. You see, every person you encounter, how kind that person is for me, you know, remembering with gratitude, you know, how beautiful that person is. And then mentally you take away his or her pain, and mentally you offer them your peace, your happiness, kind of like that. Yes, someone does that with each and every beings you encounter in, you know, in the shopping mall, you know, while driving, while working. So you see, often one is busy in one's thought because one has a responsibility, or, you know, but as soon as one has a little break, one brings it back to that. And gradually it becomes innate. You see, I don't know if some of you have maybe recited mantra for many years, you know, so when you're busy talking, blah, 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 and thinking about things, you do that. And then when you stop, automatically the mantra starts on its own. It's so innate in you, automatically you go back to, you know, you don't do it automatically, you know. You hear yourself going back to the mantra automatically. So same thing, automatically you can go back to Tonglen. You see, it becomes so innate in you, automatically it goes back to, when you're not busy doing something, automatically you go back to that. So they say, you see, a high bodhisattva, when he's not absorbed into emptiness, automatically he goes back to that. It's so innate, you see, it's the way he is or she is, you know. Due to repeated practice, familiarity, it can become innate, effortless. It's just who you are, you know. So beautiful, isn't it? You know. So whoever you are with, you know, you take away their pain, you share your happiness, whoever, you know. And that first is a state of mind, but then it affects the way you talk to people and what you do. You know, you see a beggar, the wish to give something to that beggar comes spontaneously. You know, or some people has mental problems. You have the wish to alleviate it. You know. So whatever it is, you try to help. People, whether at work, whether at home, whether in everyday life. So you start with the people around you in your life, Yeah. Yes. Yeah, good. Yeah.
So with Tonglen, with taking and giving on the breath, I just have a slow mind. So I have tried over the years to just do some giving for a bit with the breath, breathing in and out, and do some taking with the breath, breathing in and out. And then the opposite of, breathing in, out. But for me, the in, out, it's too fast.
Yes, it's too fast. Yeah.
Mentally, it's too fast. But when I do a lot of breathing in and out just for giving, it doesn't have this rhythm that going with the breath has. And I wondered if you just had some thoughts about that, there's something about riding on the breath, the in and then out, that is very helpful, but it's just my mind doesn't go quickly enough.
So first of all, here in this text, it says, with taking you start with yourself. So it means in the morning, you see, it's, how to say, to think myself being able to take on the cancer of somebody else. It's quite a quantum leap, right? I'm scared of having, come on, hey. It's kind of stretch, right? Let's be honest, right? So one starts, it says, by starting by yourself, in the morning, you start taking upon yourself the suffering that you're going to experience anyway in the afternoon, and then you start taking upon yourself the suffering you're going to experience tomorrow or next year or during this life or when you're old. So you start mentally accepting the suffering that you're going to experience anyway due to ripening of your karma, right? And then gradually you start taking on the suffering which is easier, to your child or to your parent or to your partner. You see the people you have a close link that you care for. So imagine taking their suffering on, and then gradually you expand that state of mind. So you see, when you actually take the suffering of other mentally, what you do, you cannot actually take the suffering of other. What's happening, it ripens your own suffering karma, so it purifies your own mind, right? By doing that. So gradually, one's sincerely able to do that with more and more people, and thereby purifying our own negative karma. Instead of having to experience it as physical and mental suffering or lower rebirth, we purify it by imagining taking their suffering upon oneself, right? So they say if one cannot alternate giving and taking, if one cannot do both, it says the most important amongst giving, taking, the most important is giving. Is taking. So it's the compassion that is able to take away the suffering of others. So in the commentary it says, if you can only do one of the two, you do this one. Take away the suffering of others. So the emphasis is on taking the suffering of others. And then the giving naturally comes, you give your peace of mind, your joy, things like that. And then when you actually put both on the breath, so normally, one way of doing is 10 breaths you give and 10 breaths you take, kind of like that. And then later on, what happens is these two kind of merge together. You see, giving and taking, or love and compassion, are actually not two. You see, you focus on one, it's compassion. You see, you focus on all living beings. You see, you focus on other beings. So compassion takes away their pain, and happiness and compassion, and love gives them happiness. So you still focus on the same being, but it's just the switch is very little. You see, still in both you have love for beings, in both you have compassion for being. It's just the superficial thing is taking away and giving, but the emotion state is one. You see, at the beginning you think love is one state of mind and compassion is another, but there's another state of consciousness which is love and compassion. It together, is a one thing. It's just deep love and care for all beings, which is an emotion. It has these two facets in it, right? But it's one thing. So both feed is one thing, like that. Okay, so I think it's, yeah.
One more question.
Okay.
So my question is about the meditation we did earlier this morning, the death meditation. Because there seems to be two...
A little bit louder so that people can hear.
So in the death meditation, when the consciousness absorbs in the central channel and then the heart chakra, there's like in some ways a contraction, but there's a counter movement that's the opposite, because the more the mind goes into the heart chakra, the more subtle and expansive the mind is. And so superficially they seem to be contradictory. And so in the experience, in the meditation, sometimes there can be, because it's almost like visually you're trying to, follow or imagine the mind contracting, and yet you're also trying to ease into greater expansiveness.
Exactly.
And there's no more center and so
yes.
forth. So can you talk a little bit about this seeming contradiction and how to work with it in meditation?
You see what happens for us. Our consciousness is outside, and we imagine the consciousness going in, but we are outside, right? So we are mostly outside imagining the process, but when it's actually happening more and more, you're actually inside. Instead of being outside, imagining the process happening. You see, for example, we sit here and we imagine the mind inside the central channel, but actually 99% of our consciousness is outside and 1% is maybe inside, right? So we 99 there and 1% inside. So it's like we squeeze between two but gradually, you see, consciousness is more and more inside. So instead of imagining the thing going in, you're inside and sucking it in, and it becomes more and more expansive, So it's just a matter of training. The more you do it, the more you purify the wind channel drop and things. The more it becomes experiencing within instead of outside, like that. Yeah. So on the generation stage level of practice, we mostly outside and imagine, the wind entering, abiding inside, but we actually outside imagining it, we try to squeeze our consciousness there, But actually on the completion stage, actually our consciousness is inside and actually goes to this vision, from inside instead, But at the beginning, we mostly outside and imagine it. So it's a level of imagination. So we have this kind of strange experience like that. Right? So that's why between the two, the most important is, you see, instead of imagining the thing from outside, so instead of focusing on the 99% that outside looks inside, we try to focus on the 1% that is inside. You see, the level of experience, you see, what's happened to the outside body is not so important. What's important is actually the 8th vision. You see, so try to get a feeling and experience of this 8th vision, So for example, in Enigma tradition, in Dzogchen practice, you are able to experience this more subtle mind of clear light without dissolving the 8th vision, right? So for them, this more subtle mind of clear light pervades also the gross level of consciousness. So they have a way to tune in, into this so subtle mind of clear that pervades all other level of consciousness, so without dissolving it, right? So there's a training, and then gradually one purifies the wind channel and drop, and then it produces the absorption. So whereas in our tradition we tend to purify with the generation stage and completion stage and practice like inner fire and so forth to bring it about. So there's different approaches, different meditative approaches to bring it about. But the end point is one has to clean the whole thing and then experience it, from inside. So yeah, anyway, for those which come to the Mahamudra retreat, so we're going to do this kind of practice, right? Yeah. All right, I think time has flied. So please, let's dedicate, usually one ends, So whatever positive something inspired you, something that revive your spiritual interest. So this you offer to all living beings. May I become a better person. May I develop these inner spiritual qualities. May I become more loving, more patient. And may I care for people in my life. May I express my gratitude. Remember their kindness and all what they bring in my life, and may I develop a good heart, and may I care for people, and may I be a positive influence for people in my family, around me, and at work and in environment. May I be a constructive force of inner peace, joy, and loving heart, and may I inspire people around me to become a better person. And gradually may I have the qualities, the skill and wisdom to lead others to spiritual realizations, and one day to full enlightenment. And may beings that inspire like His Holiness Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Song Rinpoche, Ling Rinpoche, and all the other enlightened masters that manifest on this planet, may they have long life, good health, and may they benefit us and inspire us and the whole planet for many more years. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow for those which can come.